All right, this next chapter is all about square root functions. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to graph square root functions. Okay, so this is your general form. So this is general form of a square root function. The a is going to be a stretch if it's greater than 1, or a shrink if it's in between 0 and 1. Okay, absolute value, because sometimes it's negative. The negative we'll talk about in just a second. The h is going to tell you whether to go left or right. Okay, hardest one about this one is if it's a minus sign in here, that tells you to go right. If it's a plus sign in here, that tells you to go left. Because if h is 7 and I have x minus 7, that 7 is still positive. Okay, so this is the tricky one. And then k tells you whether it goes up or down. Okay, now this one is true. Up is positive, down is negative. So if it's plus 7, minus 7, up 7, down 7. Okay. Now, if this is negative, so if there's a negative out in front, so if you've got a negative, okay, that tells you it's a reflection. Okay, we also call it a flip. Okay. All right. So, with graphing, okay, we don't really want to graph decimals because most of you don't like to graph decimals, which is fine. Okay, so we're going to pick good values to take square roots of. Okay. So if you remember from last chapter when we used the square rooting method, we couldn't take the square root of negative numbers. So I'm going to create a table, and these are my good values: 0, 1, 4, 9, and 16. Okay, those are good values to take square roots of. Okay, what I mean by good values is if I take the square root of 0 in my calculator, it's 0. Square root of 1 is 1. Square root of 4 is 2. Okay. So those are things that I can plot on a graph. Okay, I want whole numbers. So if I do that, so 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, and then 9, 3. Okay, so I can't get my last point on there, but that's okay. Okay, this point is not on my graph, but as long as I have it in my table, we're okay. Okay, so one thing I do want you to note is the pattern between values. So you add 1, add 3, add 5, and then add 7. Okay, that's going to come into play in just a little bit. Okay, so if I take and I look at this next one, okay, so I have graph y equals square root of x plus 2. Okay, so if I go back to my first slide, my first piece of information, this tells me to go up 2. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of the values from here, so all these points, and I'm going to move them up 2. Because this is what we call the parent graph. Okay, which means we have no transformations, so no up, down, no left, no right. Okay. So 0, 0 was here. We're going to move it up 2. So we're going to go there. 1, 1, go up 2. You had 4, 2. So take that up 2. And then you had 9, 3, up 2. So this is my new graph. Okay, so that's using those transformations that I gave you on that first slide. Okay. All right, next one. This time is a different transformation. So my minus 3 is underneath my square root. Okay, so that's my h value. So remember when I told you if it's a minus in here, that means we're going to move to the right 3. So I'm going to take those 4 points that I had, and I'm going to move them to the right 3. So 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And then this one I'm just going to estimate. 1, 2, 3. So then again, I have my graph. Okay. We're not going to do the last one. I decided I don't want to do that one, so we're not even going to worry about that one. So, biggest takeaway from this is I want you to understand these different transformations. Okay, and how to identify those. We'll talk about those more in class, and how to identify them and how to graph using them more in class together.